Worst regular season win percentage. The NBA has seen its fair share of terrible teams, but none fell quite as low as the 2011 to 2012 Charlotte Bobcats. That was a lockout-shortened season, and instead of playing the usual 82 games, they played only 66. Yet even with fewer games, Charlotte managed to end up with the lowest winning percentage in league history. They finished 7-59, which comes out to just .106. For context, the infamous 1972 to 1973 Philadelphia 76ers went 9-73, but their win percentage was slightly higher at .110. The Bobcats didn't just lose, they were humiliated night after night. They closed the year on a 23-game losing streak, one of the longest the league has ever seen. And their roster was a collection of young players and journeymen with no clear star to carry the load. Their offense was dead last in points per game, and defensively, they couldn't stop anyone. What makes it sting even more is that Charlotte fans had endured years of mediocrity, and instead of hope, they got an all-time low. Even Michael Jordan, as the team's owner, couldn't prevent the collapse. To this day, the Bobcats' 7-win season remains the gold standard of futility, a reminder that sometimes rock bottom is even lower than you thought. And believe it or not, what came next was even uglier. Longest losing streak. Losing a few games in a row is normal, but when the defeats pile up, the pressure becomes unbearable. The longest skid in NBA history belongs to the Philadelphia 76ers, who dropped 28 straight games between 2014 to 2015. That run was part of the team's infamous trust the process era, where the front office openly tanked to secure draft picks. The result was a roster built almost to lose, and it worked a little too well. Fans endured night after night of blowouts, while young players like Michael Carter-Williams and Nerlens Noel were asked to carry the load. The worst part was that the losing wasn't even contained to one season, it stretched across two, leaving the Sixers stuck in a cycle of embarrassment. And they're not alone in this category. The 2010 to 2011 Cleveland Cavaliers lost 26 straight after LeBron James left for Miami. And the 2013 to 2014 Sixers also matched that 26-game skid. Most recently, the 2023 to 2024 Detroit Pistons set a new single-season record with 27 straight defeats. These streaks are painful to watch because each game feels like it could be the one to end it, but disappointment keeps piling on. Every franchise dreads being associated with a losing streak so massive that it becomes their identity. And just when you think things couldn't get worse, one game redefined humiliation. Largest margin of defeat. On December 2nd, 2021, the Oklahoma City Thunder walked into Memphis and made history in the worst possible way. By the end of the night, the scoreboard read 152 to 79 in favor of the Grizzlies, a 73-point defeat, the largest margin in NBA history. That night, everything went wrong for OKC. They shot just 33% from the field, while Memphis couldn't miss, connecting on over 60% of their shots and hitting 19 threes. The Thunder trailed by 36 at halftime, and instead of slowing down, the Grizzlies kept pouring it on. Role players like Jaren Jackson Jr. and DeAnthony Melton looked like superstars against an overwhelmed defense. For Oklahoma City fans, it was a nightmare, but for neutral fans, it was jaw-dropping. Before that game, the record for biggest blowout was a 68-point loss in 1991 when the Heat were demolished by the Cavaliers. But Memphis didn't just break the record, they obliterated it, handing the Thunder a loss that will live forever in the record books. And to make things sting even more, OKC wasn't even tanking that year. They were trying to compete. Losing by 20 hurts, losing by 30 is rare, but losing by 73, that's a scar no franchise wants. But that wasn't the only case of offensive embarrassment in NBA history, because there's one game that redefined rock bottom scoring. Lowest scoring game. After Michael Jordan retired for good, the Chicago Bulls entered a dark era. Nothing captures that better than their game on April 10th, 1999 against the Miami Heat. The Bulls scored only 49 points in the entire game, the lowest total for any team since the NBA introduced the shot clock in 1954. They shot a horrific 23% from the field, making just 18 of 77 attempts. They also missed all 9 of their three-pointers. The Bulls had once been a dynasty that dominated the league, but in this game, they looked like a high school team facing grown men. Even worse, it was the very same season after the Bulls had won their 6th championship in 1998. The fall from grace was immediate and brutal. Fans used to seeing Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman dominating suddenly had to watch an unrecognizable roster led by Tony Kukoc and Brent went Barry Flounder. That 49-point outing stands as one of the most humiliating nights for any franchise. A complete collapse on offense. But that wasn't the only way NBA players embarrassed themselves when it came to shooting, because free throws, supposedly the easiest shot in the game, turned into nightmares for some players. Lowest free throw percentage. Free throws are supposed to be free points, but not if your name is Ben Wallace. Despite being a Hall of Fame defender and rebounder, Wallace is statistically the worst free throw shooter in NBA history. Across his career, he shot just 41.4% from the line. That means he missed more often than he made them. Some seasons were even worse. He once shot under 32% for an entire year. Opponents knew it too, and they made him a constant target for the hack-a-Ben strategy, fouling him intentionally to send him to the line, where odds were he'd brick both shots. His struggles were so infamous that they overshadowed his otherwise incredible career. Wallace was a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, a 2-time rebounding champion, and he anchored the 2004 Pistons team that stunned the Lakers in the finals. Yet ask many fans about him, and they'll bring up his free throws before his defense. It's the kind of record no player wants. A scarlet letter reminding the world that even the simplest shot in basketball can become a nightmare. But that wasn't the only kind of shot that haunted legends, because one all-time great kept firing from deep despite missing almost every time. Worst three-point percentage. Charles Barkley is remembered as a Hall of Famer, an MVP, and one of the most dominant forwards ever. But there's one part of his game that he never figured out, the three-point line. Over his career, Barkley attempted more than 2,000 threes, but made only 26.6% of them, the lowest percentage ever for someone with that many attempts. What makes it worse is that he kept shooting them, even though it was clear they weren't his strength. Teammates and coaches often shook their heads as Barkley launched ill-advised long balls early in the shot clock. The irony is that Barkley played during a time when the three-pointer wasn't nearly as emphasized as it is today. Yet despite being ahead of his time in willingness, he was far behind in accuracy. To this day, he's the only player with over 2,000 attempts and under 30% shooting. Fans love to joke about it now, especially since Barkley has built a career as a TV analyst criticizing today's players. But this record follows him like a shadow. For all his talent and bravado, he'll always be the worst volume three-point shooter in league history. And if missing threes is bad, losing your cool with referees created another unforgettable record. Most technical fouls in a season, Rasheed Wallace was a fiery competitor. And while that intensity made him a nightmare matchup on the court, it also led to one of the most embarrassing records in NBA history. During the 2000 to 2001 season, Wallace picked up an unbelievable 41 technical fouls. To put that in perspective, that's nearly one every other game. He argued with referees, barked at opponents, and even got called for techs while sitting on the bench. His constant outbursts became such a spectacle that the NBA eventually changed the rules, capping players at 16 technicals per season before an automatic suspension kicks in. That means Wallace's record will probably never be broken. It's simply impossible under today's rules. While some fans admired his passion, others saw him as a distraction who cost his team points and momentum. What makes it even crazier is that Rasheed was genuinely talented and could have been remembered more for his skills than his temper. Instead, his name is forever tied to this record. It shows how a lack of control can define a season, and in Wallace's case, it defined his legacy. But that's not the only record that reveals how even legends can struggle, because one Hall of Famer's legacy is forever tied to something equally unwanted: missing shots. But first, only cool people are subscribed to this channel, so hit that subscribe button before we go any further. Most missed field goals. Scoring legends are celebrated for their highlights, but every made basket comes with plenty of misses. No one embodies this better than Kobe Bryant, who for years held the all-time record for most missed field goals at 14,481. He was fearless, taking shots from every angle regardless of how many he had already missed. Then in 2024, LeBron James surpassed Kobe, bringing the record to over 14,482 misses and counting. On paper, it sounds humiliating, being the most prolific misser in basketball history. But that's not all, because it also highlights the pressure these superstars carried. Only the greatest scorers ever get the chance to take enough shots to pile up that many misses. Still, the optics sting. Fans and critics love to bring it up, using it as ammunition in debates about efficiency versus volume. For Kobe, it became part of his Mamba mentality, shoot through the slumps. For LeBron, it's the byproduct of playing longer and scoring more than anyone else. The record is a strange mix of greatness and embarrassment, but in the end, nobody dreams of being remembered for missing shots. And if missing field goals stings, the pain gets even worse when turnovers enter the conversation. Most turnovers in NBA history. LeBron James holds more than a few all-time records, but not all of them are flattering. Among the less glamorous is the record for most career turnovers, surpassing 5,000. For a player who often handles the ball as both scorer and playmaker, mistakes are inevitable, but this record paints him in a less flattering light. Every misplaced pass, every stolen dribble, every miscommunication adds up. Critics point to it as evidence that LeBron can be careless, while defenders argue that it's simply the price of longevity and responsibility. The truth lies somewhere in between. Yes, it's a record of mistakes, but it's also a reflection of how much trust his teams placed in him. He was always the one with the ball, the one asked to make the tough decisions. Still, the raw number doesn't lie. No one has turned the ball over more. And if losing possessions feels costly, piling up fouls was another way even legends sabotage themselves. Which brings us to one surprising name at the top of that list. Most fouls in a career. When people think of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, they remember the skyhook, 6 championships, and the all-time scoring record he held for decades. What most don't know is that he also holds the record for the most fouls in NBA history with 4,657. Over 20 seasons, Kareem dominated the paint, but defending big men often meant racking up contact on nearly every possession. Some of his fouls were strategic, others were simply the price of protecting the rim, but the total is staggering. To put it in perspective, that's more than 1,000 fouls ahead of many other Hall of Famers. For someone who is remembered as graceful and efficient, this record is a reminder that even legends get whistled more than anyone else. It's a strange footnote in his career, and while it doesn't overshadow his greatness, it shows how longevity exposes even the greatest players to less flattering milestones. And fouls weren't the only way to ruin efficiency, because when it came to putting the ball in the hoop, one name stands out as the most inaccurate of all time. Lowest career field goal percentage. In today's NBA, inefficient scorers don't last very long, but in the 1940s and 50s, things were different. John Monken, a 6'8" forward, managed to carve out a 9-year career despite being historically bad at shooting. Over more than 400 games, he made just 27.2% of his field goals, the lowest percentage in NBA history for anyone with significant minutes. Think about that. He missed nearly 3 out of every 4 shots he took. Part of this was the era. Shooting percentages were lower back then, but even compared to his peers, Monken was a glaring outlier. His defense and size kept him in the league, but offensively, he became a running joke in record books. Having the lowest shooting percentage ever is the kind of legacy no player wants attached to their name. It proves that sometimes just surviving in the league can leave you with a record that feels more like a stain than an accomplishment. And if missing shots game after game feels bad, starting a season with nothing but losses takes humiliation to an entirely different level. Worst start to a season. The 2009 to 2010 New Jersey Nets opened their season with 18 straight losses, the worst start in NBA history. Before December even began, the team was buried at the bottom of the standings. Their offense sputtered, their defense collapsed, and coaches rotated like musical chairs. Lawrence Frank, the head coach to begin the year, was fired after an 0-16 start, leaving the team scrambling for answers. The Nets had young talent like Brook Lopez and Devin Harris, but the roster lacked leadership and depth. Each game became more of a spectacle, with fans wondering if they would ever win. The pressure grew so suffocating that when they finally got their first victory, it felt like they had won a championship. Ending the season at 12-70 only added to the misery, as the Nets cemented themselves in history as one of the most hopeless starts ever. It was proof that once a season begins to spiral, it's almost impossible to pull out of it. And if losing games in bunches looks bad, imagine missing every single shot in a game. That's where the next record comes in. Most consecutive missed shots in a game. Every shooter has an off night, but Tim Hardaway set the bar for futility in 1991 when he missed 17 straight shots in a single game. Known for his killer crossover and scoring ability, Hardaway simply couldn't buy a bucket that night. The misses came in every form: jumpers, layups, even open looks that usually fell with ease. His teammates kept feeding him, hoping he would finally break the slump, but the rim felt like it had a lid on it. What makes this record sting is that Hardaway was an all-star caliber caliber guard in his prime, not a fringe player. It's one thing for a role player to have a nightmare shooting night, but when a star goes ice cold, it magnifies the humiliation. Fans and media never forgot it, and the record still stands as a reminder that no matter how talented you are, sometimes the game betrays you. But if missing shots in one night is bad, imagine missing the postseason year after year after year. Longest playoff drought. For 16 long seasons, the Sacramento Kings couldn't find their way back to the playoffs. From 2006 until 2023, the Kings wandered in the NBA wilderness, cycling through coaches, general managers, and draft picks that rarely panned out. Fans who once packed Arco Arena during the early 2000s glory years were left clinging to memories of Chris Webber, Mike Bibby, and Peja Stojakovic. The drought became the longest in NBA history, and what made it worse was how close they came at times, winning 38 or 39 games, only to fall short. Each season seemed to start with new hope, only to collapse by midwinter. When they finally broke the curse in 2023, the relief was enormous, but the damage had been done. For over a decade and a half, Sacramento was the symbol of dysfunction in professional basketball. No franchise wants to hold a record that screams irrelevant, but the Kings lived it. And if that sounds brutal, Wilt Chamberlain set a different kind of record that showed even legends could embarrass themselves. Most missed free throws in a game. Wilt Chamberlain is remembered as one of the most dominant forces the game has ever seen. But his biggest weakness was no secret. He couldn't hit free throws. On November 4th, 1967, that flaw reached historic levels when he missed 22 free throws in a single game, the most ever. Even in his famous 100-point game, he bricked 27 shots from the line despite scoring nearly at will everywhere else. Opponents regularly fouled him on purpose, knowing the odds were stacked against him at the stripe. For a player who scored more than 30,000 career points, this blemish followed him throughout his career. Wilt's physical dominance made him nearly unstoppable, but his free throw shooting kept him from being flawless. Missing that many in one night is a reminder that even all-time greats have glaring weaknesses. And what's coming next proves that when it comes to piling up bad records, nobody was safe. Not even the biggest names in NBA history. If you like this video, consider watching this next one, which YouTube thinks you are going to really love.